Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to These Go to 11. Once again, I'm Nathan Bell. Joining me in this, well, actually, he's not joining me in this hot, nasty, sweaty car again. It is Zach Bartles. Zach, what's going on, man?
Dude, I am just hoping that when you rolled those windows up again for the second time in as many weeks for the program, that this time we'll have something to show for it at the end of the day.
I know. Oh, man. Well, hopefully this time you're doing all the recording on your end. So hopefully, like you said, we'll get something. And Zach, can I just say, I don't care how good or bad it is, as long as we get something and we record it and we air it, it will in some way not make this worth it at all, but at least we'll have something up. So.
Yeah, and well, I think people need to know your situation. You're in your car, your windows are up, and your AC is on the blink, so you've got...
Yeah.
It reminds me, when we were kids, dude, when you were in, like the era of car that had, like, the GM on the, like, logo on the button, on the metal seatbelt,
Yes.
you know what I'm talking about? Like, there would be an option for AC, heat, and then just vent. Remember that?
Yes.
So that's what you're doing. You're doing vent.
I'm doing vent.
What is the temperature there? I.e., how hot is the air that you're blowing in on yourself?
So the air outside of the car, well, thankfully right now I'm actually driving in the tunnel. So the tunnel is a little cooler. The air outside the vehicle is over 100 degrees. I would say what's being blown at me right now is close to 95 or 96 degrees. So it is just enough to take a little bit of the edge off, and we'll see how it works.
Dude, I walked in the door. I was coming from a funeral. I popped in. I was like, all right, I got to get ready to podcast. And I looked at the thermostat, and I said, what the heck is going on here? 73? And I pushed down twice. I was like, what, are we animals here? I can't deal with 73. I can deal with negative
luxury.
10 better than that, yeah.
Luxury.
All right, man.
Have you ever seen that Four Yorkshiremen sketch from Monty Python?
I don't think so.
Dude, you've got to YouTube that thing. It is hysterical. It's these, upper crust older men recounting their childhood. And, I used to walk in the snow both ways uphill, and they're all out doing each other. And one of them, he lays down this really intense, growing up experience where, he was beat 5 times a day before he was sent out to work, and then he had to go to school and then come back home. And, and so he's recounting all these things, and the guy just looks at him and says, luxury.
I think that might have died with our generation. I have no stories. I mean, we have the, super sarcastic, you wouldn't believe what we had to do to look something up when we were kids, or, we didn't have the internet in our pockets, but, I mean, I don't know. There's no, uphill both ways,
Right.
Toes are frozen, and my hands are scalding from the hot potato I had to carry, and, all that stuff. And
Right.
I feel like we'd rather just sort of try and make our kids have a better life and not make them feel bad about it. But
yeah,
that's me anyway. I don't know.
I won't make you feel guilty about how good you have it.
Unless you complain. If a kid
Right,
complains,
right.
dude, if my kid says I'm bored during the summer, he immediately closes his eyes, recoiling, oh crap, I should not have said that because there is a long speech coming.
I've just sealed my doom.
That's one that I cannot suffer. I'm bored, and I go, oh my goodness, I would be too. I mean, what could you possibly do? And then I just start running him. And if I say, you have to get off your screens for an hour, this kid will be like, well, I don't know what to do, and he'll just kind of wander around, looking morose. And I used to be like, listen, man, you could do this, you could do this. Now I just let him waste his time. And
nice.
I feel like that has worked. He's like, oh, crap, there is a lot of fun stuff I could do outside. I do have friends that live on the street. I do have, Transformers and Legos and, everything else. So, Beyblades, 17,000 Beyblades.
Oh, my gosh.
Dude,
Man,
my
nuts.
kid's learning like physics from those. No joke. He was explaining to me like the centrifugal force that made like these barbs come out from this, and then when it like, slowed to this many RPMs, they went back in, and that increased the strength of the spin and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't know if that's right, but you sound smart. Probably right. I don't know.
He's just got to adopt a British accent, and then no one will ever question him.
I think they would question as to why he had a British accent. But... Dude, my kid was doing a British accent at like 4. If anybody like said anything about something being fancy or something, he'd bounce on with the British accent. It was hilarious.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh!
So I gotta tell you, man, I haven't had a chance to listen to the Spider-Man. What was that? Like a dub? What do you call that kind of crossover? I guess where you it probably was in our feed and it was in their feed and it was in both feeds.
Yep.
Is there anything left to say about Spider-Man, or did you guys say it all? I saw it twice now.
So you know what? I would say go ahead and give us your thoughts, Zach, because I briefly interjected some of yours in there. Nathan thought it was good, but he didn't think it was great. So
really, no, I should have listened to it. I already down. Here's the thing, man. My phone, I went to download a bunch of stuff when I was up north with Ted, and my phone wouldn't download anything. And I determined a few days later that for some reason my little SD card had decided it was write protected, and whatever I did would not make that. So I had to throw it away and get a new one. So anyway, that's my excuse.
Oh, crazy!
What was his beef with it? Like, what didn't he like?
He thought it was good, but not as good as the first one.
Yeah,
true. His thoughts were that with it coming right after Avengers Endgame and how iconic that was, and he was honest. He was like, basically anything that came after that was going to have difficulty measuring up. But he did say that out of all the sequels from Marvel, he thought it was the best.
Dude, here's an unpopular opinion.
Okay.
I would rather watch Far From Home than Endgame any day. I doubt I'll ever see Endgame again.
Interesting. Now, see, and I told him, because you remember when he was on with us, you and I were actually more, this is the thing. When I say I'm like more against Endgame, like I thought it was a good movie, people. Stop ripping on me for thinking it was a lousy movie. I thought it was a good movie. I thought that there were other movies that were better to close all these things out.
Hey, buddy.
It had some issues.
I need you to say that last thing again. I got nothing. I got tunnel voice from you.
So what I said was, I thought Endgame was a good movie. I thought for it ending off this series, it could have been better. Before entering the next phase of Marvel, I thought that it could have been better. And I thought that the things that Spider-Man did, in my opinion, I thought were really good, where I wish Endgame hadn't done that. So, like, basically Endgame, particularly at the end, it was all about Tony Stark. Spider-Man actually even had a little tribute in there to the other Avengers who died. And I thought it was weird that it took Spider-Man to do that. And Endgame didn't end up doing that, So
that intro was one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Where it started with "I've always loved you," and the image of Vision was like really like pixelated and crappy.
Yeah.
And then there was the thing that still had like the Getty Images watermark on it.
Yes.
I was dying. That was such a great beginning. Dude, that new character that was dating Ned.
Oh my goodness.
Hilarious. She was great.
Yes.
And
that whole story arc was perfect.
I would have rather probably just watched like a Peter Parker movie than the Spider-Man movie at that point. It was, and the MJ Peter thing was just, it was great. The whole thing was great. It was I mean, you and I probably had a half an hour discussion about how great it was in between the two podcasts last time. But there's probably not a ton more to say. I really don't know what more. If the beef was it felt too small after Endgame, that was what I liked about it. And yet at the same time, it wasn't just like, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man vibe. He's, globe-trotting. They're going all across Europe. We're seeing all these huge amazing set pieces. We're moving into this virtual reality world that's indiscernible from the real world. And if you're locked in it, it was really, really, it delivered is what it did. I can't think of a Marvel movie that I would have been, other than the first Iron Man and maybe the first Guardians of the Galaxy, that would have been a better follow-up to Endgame. Or Winter Soldier. I mean, none of those would have made sense because they take place before. But like that quality of movie.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like the whole high school feel. I thought this did that whole high school summer feel, like the relationships and the connectivity of the characters and the students. I actually thought it was better in this one than they did in the first one. Like I actually felt like I was watching a group of teenagers hanging out. In the first one, I didn't get that vibe as much. So that was kind of my thought.
I kind of thought that they were going to have MJ have not blipped.
Oh yeah,
and be 5 years older. I'm kind of glad they didn't, but it was quite a coincidence that all of our major characters from Homecoming, including Flash Thompson and MJ, Ned, who I always want to call Genki because they ganked Genki's character from the Miles Morales comics. Everybody happened to not, but I did like that character. There was something definitively relatable. I don't know why it felt relatable to me, because obviously I've never blipped, but the way that all of a sudden that young kid was like talking down to him and like a threat with his girl and everything. There was something about like coming back from summer break and like occasionally like the littlest guy he'd have just like shot up and his voice was lower and his muscles were more defined than yours, and you're like, what? Why doesn't that happen to me right now? The whole thing was awesome, and I feel like the one thing that this Spider-Man franchise has, not only on all the other movies, the I'm Pooping one with Tobey Maguire, those three movies, the two with Andrew Garfield, is, and over the comics, is the way that they kind of justify all the over-the-top stuff with Tony Stark.
Yes.
Like the reason that the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man has organic web shooters is because Sam Raimi, who by the way just bought a house right up near where Ted and I were staying in northern Michigan on the Lake Huron lakeshore where I grew up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which I thought was kind of cool. But like Sam Raimi said, I can't, in a story, I can do a lot of wild stuff, but there's no way to explain how this kid could come up with this substance that 3M couldn't come up with. You know, like he's not that big a genius, and so we made it just like, and which made sense. It's part of the mutation, right? But I guess my assumption here is maybe he had a certain formula that worked pretty well, and then Tony like tweaked it, and that's why it works really well now. Like anything unbelievable, you go, okay, well he's got all the billions of dollars worth of tech behind him,
right?
And go ahead.
I was just going to say, and Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man doesn't live in a world with Iron Man and all this crazy tech and innovations and inventions where Peter Parker does. I mean, he's like, in theory, I guess like 8 years old when the Battle of New York happens, or I mean, I guess younger than that, when the Battle of New York happens. And so he's got all of these ideas and plans and blueprints to build off of to help him in his tech designs.
Right, yeah, okay, so maybe they should have showed him a la Vulture. Like, maybe when Vulture was recovering some of that alien tech, we could have had, Peter pick something up or something, I don't know, something to give him the advantage. But anyway, I felt like the whole thing was great, and I went and saw it twice, and I will definitely get that one on Blu-ray when it comes out, because I'm still a physical media guy. Yes,
I am as well. All my movies I get, and then my older brother, has actually taken all of his stuff and gone completely digital. So he doesn't go out and really buy anything anymore unless it's digital. So I give him the digital download code, and then he gives me his iTunes account, and so we just hook each other up with media content.
Dude, you know what pisses me off is when you buy like a slightly older movie and it says like DVD, Blu-ray, digital, and then the digital code is like,
digital's expired.
This doesn't work anymore. I'm like, dude, I paid for it. Yeah, that makes me angry.
Yeah, I agree. I've actually noticed in some of them, they've been taking out those expiration dates. But yeah, there is. You're right. You go in occasionally and you're pulling it out, and it's like, come on.
Give me a DVD any day, man. I would much rather put a disc in a player, and I don't care what anyone says. It is higher quality. When you're watching on Netflix, and we have like the super fast fiber optic internet, our router is probably a little bit outdated, so maybe that's clogging up the works. But like when I'm watching Netflix, I can see in the background like if the background is a darker colored wall, it's blocky. There's like 4 or 5 different blues, and that's it. It's not smooth. It's distracting. And when you put a Blu-ray in, it looks like a moving 35 millimeter photograph at whatever size your TV is. I'll take that, please, and thank you.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So speaking of alien tech, man, maybe that's a little segue for us.
There you go. Yeah, man. So I've been on Facebook recently, and I started looking at all these memes popping up about Area 51. And oh my goodness, I had no clue what they were about, but they were hysterical. So I started kind of going back and trying to figure out like what is the background with all of this and what's going on. And near as I can tell, and Zach, if you've checked this out, correct me if I'm wrong, a guy just put up for a joke hey, we're going to do an Area 51 raid.
Yeah.
And people started like actually coming up with dates and a time. And then all these like memes started popping up about like people going to visit Area 51 and getting their aliens and bringing them home. And
people started choosing the day they were going to die, in other words.
Yeah. And the government put out basically a post to this like, Area 51 is a military installation, and we will guard it at any means necessary. And of course, that just spawned like a whole new set of memes and things like that out there.
What's the best one you've seen, man?
Oh, it was one. Did you ever see the movie Hot Fuzz?
Oh yeah.
So it's one with the bigger guy in there, and it says
Nick Frost.
Nick Frost. It says only 13 people showed up to Area 51, and you see him loading his shotgun, and underneath, shame.
I saw one on the Dunder Mifflin Theological Seminary Facebook group, which along with our These Go to 11 Facebook group is the whole reason I get on Facebook. It had a picture of Jim, Dwight, and Michael with the fake mustaches on, and it was an event, like a Facebook event you could sign up for. And it said, burn Utica to the ground while everyone is busy at Area 51.
Nice. So what do you think about that? Like the whole like blowing up. I mean, do you think some people are seriously going to like join in on this thing and try to get in there? Or do you think this is like run its course as a joke?
Someone will. People will. 1.5 million people have signed up, and some of them have nothing better to do. That's just a fact. So people will be there. I don't think they're gonna get cut down with chain guns or anything. I know the government is savvier than that, and I think they'll use some kind of non-lethal like sound blasting or something. I think it'll be very uncomfortable, and I think people are going to be prosecuted. Yeah. Can I confess something kind of weird to you?
Sure.
Whenever I read about, like, Freedom of Information Act, or declassify everything, or open up and tell us everything that happened related to the supposed alien crashes or the Kennedy assassination or whatever, I don't get excited. I feel really annoyed. And I think it's not that I'm like on the side of Big Brother. I'm not, the rich and powerful elite that benefit. I think it's just that it robs a little more of the kind of excuse me, the kind of like mystery and the sort of excitement of our culture. If all of the mysteries are neutralized, that's not as fun anymore. Like, if there's still a chance they faked that moon landing, I mean, obviously they didn't, but if there's still a chance they're little green men in capsules, you know, and I don't know, to me, I like the unknown of it. I like the secrecy of it. I do like thinking our government is keeping an awful lot of secrets from everyone because they're a government, and it's, you know, like I don't connect on any level with even the ethos, the impulse to say they can't kill all of us. We're gonna charge in there. And here's the thing: even if there is like an underground facility, they can't kill us all. We'll all go right up to the like reinforced 8-inch or 3-foot thick steel door that requires retinal scans, and then we'll stand there in the desert until we all get so thirsty we have to go back home. Like, what are you gonna do? You can't get in. You can't like push in.
Right.
What are your thoughts? Are you a real like freedom of information, like let all the people know everything guy, or what?
I would say I'm moderate when it comes to that stuff. I think to a certain extent there are things that that we should be made aware of, and we should be told uncompromisingly. Like, the fact of the matter is, you know what? If the government is recording every single thing that we say and do, just tell me. Like, there's nothing that I'm going to, you know, like, I really don't care. It's really not going to change what I do and say, but, you know, just tell me that you're doing this. And in fact, I think if you tell me you're doing this, that might make me feel a little safer that you're actually monitoring all these different conversations and things like that, you know? But I'm with you. I don't think the government has an obligation to spill all of its secrets to the people. And I think, you know, I mean, we live in the digital age of, okay, so the government's going to spill all of its secrets to us, and then all of the countries around the world are going to be listening in on those things as well.
Exactly.
You know, we are still a nation. We are still governed by borders and boundaries and laws. And you know, in the event of some kind of attack, we still do want to retain a modicum of secrecy and
the element of surprise.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there are certain things, like I said, that I'm like, just, you know, tell us what's going on. But a lot of other things, it's like, no, I don't think we need to know all of the things that are going on. And I don't think the government has an obligation to tell us all those things either.
Dude, do you listen to a podcast called Radio Lab? It's also a NPR show.
No, but I've heard of it.
Oh, you would like it. It's really, really good. But you should check out, they have one, I can't remember exactly what it was called. It was the term based on either the case or the lawyer who came up with the phrase. But it was all about the initial secret that someone had filed the Freedom of Information Act to unlock and release, and how they were like, how do we not break the law, but not break our duty to the CIA, like our sworn like vow that we took to protect our secrets and do what we do. And they came up with that I can neither confirm nor deny. It was a sub that had sunk, a Russian sub, and we had located it and tried to get inside and all this stuff. And it was like a neither confirm nor deny, which has become it's like this whole thing that people parody and parrot and stuff. But in the 60s or 70s, whenever this happened, it was that was brand new. And I don't know. I think that, like you say, there needs to be a lot of stuff that if you throw it out there and say, here, everyone can know, that puts us at a distinct disadvantage to people who can kind of keep their stuff together and keep it secret. Like, we don't even know exactly who has nukes. If we not only say, everyone knows we have them, but we say, this is how many and this is exactly where they are. Oh, and if you file a request, I'll tell you exactly how we made them, like the process. I mean, where do you draw the line? I don't get, I get the reaction to like the really big government. Like, I get the bitterness and resentment of you're doing all this. I'm supposed to be the government. It's of the people, by the people, for the people. But of the people, by the people, and for the people doesn't mean every single one of the people is involved in every single aspect of the government.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I think, I think some people are, I think like it's with like anything. There are people out there, who have a well-balanced thought and idea of what the government should be doing. Then there are people who are to the extreme of, we don't need to know anything. We just need to trust our government that they have our best interests at heart. And, they're going to make all the rules that are going to benefit everyone and benefit humanity. And then there are the ones that are like, government, who needs government? Kind of the Judge Dredd, I am the law type thing.
Anyone who says like, oh yeah, I'm an anarchist. Anytime I've encountered that, I look the person up and down and I say, you better hope you don't get what you're wishing for. Because they're always like the scrawniest, weakest people. It's like you would be someone's slave in like 10 minutes if there were anarchy. What do you mean you're an anarchist? And you better not say you're a Christian and an anarchist, because that doesn't jibe at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the reality is it just, the type of, person who thinks there should be no government. I mean, really doesn't fully understand what that means and what that equates to. Let me ask you something about that, not to go too far off track, but like I've often thought about like the type of person who thinks that you can get away without having any type of a government. Do you think they're just exceptionally naive about the nature of people, or do you think they are truly evil themselves? I mean, we're all obviously truly evil apart from Christ, but do you think they're like more devious and like, oh, I could get away with a lot more stuff if the government wasn't around?
That's an interesting question. Like the pop culture version is anarchists just don't want to be punished for their actions. Whereas I think most of the time when I run into people who tend toward that way, it's more like we'd do a better job without the few controlling the many, and the inside of a human's heart is good enough. We don't need no stinking laws and oversight.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, I don't know how you find your way into your pants in the morning if that's where your mind is. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't take much to open up the newspaper or turn on the news and find out that that's, the state that humanity is in sin nature, just how far we've fallen into sin nature. So yeah, I don't really get that aspect of it either. So, but but anyway, I have been enjoying the Area 51 memes. They have been entertaining, and so what I really want is I want for the people who are seriously looking to bum rush Area 51, I want the periphery group of people who are there with their cell phones recording the whole thing. That's what I really want to see is the outcome of all that.
Well, I really hope people don't get hurt, because I think it's one of those situations where a lot of people are thinking of it as a game. Because the idea of aliens, crash landing is goofy. The idea of a whole bunch of people being there makes it feel safe, right?
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, they can't. That's the whole they can't like kill us all thing. But
right,
I really have a lot. When I think about it, it's funny until you think about an individual who gets in over their head. They think it's funny. They get there, have a horrible realization at just the moment where it becomes too late.
Yeah.
That they've done something very foolish, and now they're going to pay the consequences. I mean, if anybody asked me, should I do this? I wouldn't say, well, it's I would say, don't.
Don't do it.
Do not. There's no... Yeah. What's the possible upside? You're not seeing aliens. Best case scenario, you have a cool story to tell. Admittedly, it would be a very cool story to tell.
Right.
But, I mean, find a different cool story to tell.
Right.
That's not the same as 1.5 million other people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's it.
Yeah.
What if there are aliens, though, Nathan? Do you think that negates the Bible? There's a discussion question.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Actually, I've had that discussion with my students before, on multiple levels, and this is what I always say, because Louis Giglio made a really good argument
Gigs
about and it was just kind of in passing, and he said, yeah, maybe there could be aliens, but here's the thing. Our view of are there other aliens out there is looking at the universe and looking at the grandness of the universe and saying, man, this is so huge. There can't possibly be any other. There has to be other intelligent life out there. I mean, it's just so massive, the probability of it. And what he said was, flip your perspective and look at it through God's eye. The universe might be huge and expansive to us, but from God's perspective, it's really not. It is what it is. And so, when you start kind of flipping your mindset, so I would always tell students, is it possible? Yes, because in order to say it's not possible or impossible, I would have to be God. I am obviously not him. I do not know. And so I would say it's possible. Do I think it is likely? No, I don't. And part of it is for that reason. Now, if I die and, I'm standing face to face, with our creator and master, and he reveals that there's other intelligent life out there, am I going to be so, shock faced and, oh my goodness, I can't believe? No, absolutely not. He's God. He can do whatever he wants to do. And I think that's one of the things that I really like and appreciate about like C.S. Lewis's writings, is he leaves the idea of the supposal in the imagination. What if God did do these things? What would it look like? And I enjoy pondering those things. I enjoy imagining those things and thinking about those things. What about you? Is that something that would totally rock your world?
Well, I have two responses. The first is, I know these two guys who actually encountered God in the heavens, in the third heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And they were there to meet the most brilliant scientist in the universe.
Yeah.
Turned out to be an alien, but was actually two aliens that would then run really fast into each other and turn into one alien. Dude, you've never seen Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
It's been years.
What are your life choices?
It's been years. Actually, the one I'm more familiar with is Their Excellent Adventure.
Station. That's Station I'm describing. He has a really long butt. Hilarious. All
right, Zach. Our next podcast, we're gonna sit down and we're gonna watch it together and we're gonna podcast it.
I love it. Let's do it. Let's MST3K this sucker. Only it's not a bad movie. It's a great movie. Ends with this epic performance of God Gave Rock and Roll to You. It's amazing. But then the other thing is that I can't really discuss it other than that kind of sarcastic way, because like, have you ever been driving down the street and you see someone like on public property or in their own front yard doing Tai Chi?
Yeah.
And you get so embarrassed for them that you literally want to die? That's exactly how I feel when I hear people discussing whether or not there might be aliens and how God would view that, and like getting theological about it. I'm like, nah, I'm so embarrassed for you. Stop. And this might be my own issue, because I get a similar kind of feel when people get too like weirdly overfamiliar and goofy about like talking about heaven must be like. It's not that I'm embarrassed of the idea of heaven. It's that when I hear people talk about it in a way that sounds, I mean, childlike is good with faith, but sounds like, I don't know, too corny, too after school special, and not reverential enough. I get like really weirdly embarrassed on their behalf, and I think it's just like there is something fun about saying we're gonna make a story, we're gonna make a movie, we're gonna write a novel. It's gonna explore what's one possibility of what might it be like on the other side of death, or on the other side of the universe, or in this fantastical world that doesn't exist. We're gonna write the rules. But all the like like corny speculation about what heaven might be like, what might lie. I don't know. There's something I just don't respect about it, and I don't know where it comes from. And I know it's not you, it's me. But there it is. Like,
it's not you, it's me, but it's really you.
Yeah, well, it might be. I don't know. It all depends on whether it's rooted in I'm more highly revering God and His revelation and not wanting to go beyond it, or maybe it's that I am a little bit embarrassed about the possible ramifications of. But that can't be it, because it's the same feeling whether I'm surrounded by all believers or there are unbelievers present. It's not like I'm like, no, don't, they're going to hear us and think we're dumb. I get like when I'm doing a funeral and like I had a guy say, I know he's up in heaven riding his Harley with the wind blowing through his hair with his Guns N' Roses t-shirt on right now. And like, I mean, that's probably bad theology, definitely bad theology right now. I mean, the new earth has yet to be created, but like, right. I don't know, just like that kind of equating the actual hope that we have with some corny thing you just came up with. And for, I don't know why, but for some reason, the whole alien thing kind of is in the same wheelhouse in my mind, the same ballpark, on the very far edge of the ballpark, but in this, I get the same kind of sense of shut up. So, I don't know, and I mean, if there are aliens, I would love to be the one guy who could go down and look at what's in Area 51. Sure, I'm a curious person, but I don't know. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. Have I contradicted myself 2 or 3 times over? Probably. If anybody relates to this, if anyone can put a face on this or say, yes, I have the same thing, or I identified the source of it, please comment on the discussion group.
Yeah.
And let me know what's up.
Yeah. It's interesting listening to you talk about things like that, because I enjoy the speculation about heaven to a certain extent. I think most of it is really, I don't know what the right word is. It's stereotypical for a lot of things, and it's not necessarily biblically based and rooted. I mean, when you look at what Scripture says about, the new heavens and the new earth and everything that's going to be, put right again, there's not a whole lot said. I start cringing when people start holding up books and stories about people who have died and gone to heaven.
Oh, yeah.
They start holding these things up right next to the Bible, saying, well, it's true because this person saw it, and this is what, the Bible says about it. And it's like, look, we have Paul in the Bible talking about someone he knew who, went up to, or it was him, right? He went up to the third heaven, had a vision. That's what we think,
that it was probably him talking about himself.
And he says nothing about it. This is under the authority of Scripture. If there's any doubt about the inspiration of the Holy Spirit and what God has to say on the subject, we get nothing on it in this vision or experience, whatever he had, however he encountered it, we get nothing. And so I'm sorry, I'm not about to go out and promote a book that, some 5-year-old wrote under the coercion of his father to, make all this stuff up. And no, I mean, I am content to ponder these things, to leave up to my imagination within the realm of what I think my relationship with Christ will look like, and kind of try to picture that. I have no issue guiding students and telling them, this is what I think. Obviously, I don't know, but this is kind of my thoughts on it. I have no problem doing that, but ultimately saying anything that we have that could have been concrete wasn't given to us. And so we need to just going back to Deuteronomy 29:29, the secret things of God.
Yeah.
That there are things that God has not revealed to us, and we need to be okay with that and just say, you know what, when it's time, and he will reveal it to us in time.
Or not. Who knows?
Right.
Now, he may keep state secrets as well, and so I don't know that God has a Freedom of Information Act. I have to say, the thing I think that ties these two things together is that when you bring up like the Malarkey book and stuff, I really do put in my mind, I went to heaven and here's what heaven is like that goes way beyond Scripture, and I was abducted by aliens and here's how they probed me. I put those stories in the same category in my mind.
Yeah.
I don't know that they're not true, but they're probably I mean, like, one of them is probably a dream and some weird, bad, whatever, Indian food or something you had the night before. And one of them may be, the effects of the drugs as you were lying on the table in the operating room and the light. I don't know. It's not impossible, but I don't need for it to be true. That's for you if it's true. It's not for me.
Right.
So you don't need, and it's certainly not for your enormous bank account.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that is the difference, and that is critical. That I have heard many godly men and women talk about experiences that they've had with encountering the person of Jesus, and it's never sensationalized. It's just very matter of fact, and it's like there's never really these huge descriptions. We talked about this last week, with the way that different people encounter and come to Christ. And in the Middle East, it is often tied to these visions of Christ, but it's never like this sensationalized, I'm going to write a bestseller on this, or, it's always just, this is my story, and take it as you will, but that's what it is. And I really appreciate those types of things, because there is the understanding that it was revealed to me, not to you, and so I'm not going to expect you to believe me.
Hey man, did you? And this is not anything we talked about, but talking about malarkey and supposed visions, extra biblical information and words given by God. Have you seen this recent Bethel thing?
I saw the article. I didn't have a chance to click on it. Why don't you give me the quick download on it?
Well, here's the thing. It's from Reformation Charlotte, which a lot of people don't realize is basically pulpit and pen. So grains of salt all around. I usually, if I see something where I'm like, oh, interesting, I will click over there while kind of digging my heel into my other calf by way of penitence. For giving them another click, and then I will open only the original source and not read any of their vitriol, which is what I did here. And I don't know if they put it up or if someone else did or if Bethel themselves did, but it had a ton of context. And as you watched it and the context unfolded after the comment, it got less and less problematic, but it doesn't matter. It's still blasphemy, I think. This guy, this youth pastor, was telling a group of kids that he had been wronged by a pastor. He said it was just words that were said to him. There was no physical abuse or anything like that, sexual abuse or anything. It was just that some jerky stuff was said to him, and it almost made him bail on church, but it didn't. And then he said, here in this sanctuary, I laid down on the ground one night and I was bawling, and I had a vision of Christ, and he picked me up and he held me close to him. And I'm watching this, I'm going, okay, I wonder if this is what these mean guys have an issue with. Like the idea they're going to be like, that's gay or something. Like I could see that. Jesus holding me close to his chest. I'm actually getting a little emotional as I'm listening to it. I'm like, I know that feeling, man. I need that a lot. And John, by the way, needed it too. And Jesus was like, come here and lean on me.
Right.
But so he says, Jesus held me close to his chest and he said to me, forgive me.
Oh.
And I was like, what am I looking at? And all of a sudden, like the little like, aw, that's touching, went away in a heartbeat. And I had a real, and I don't put a ton of stock in this. This is just my own visceral reaction. Like, you know, when you hear someone say something really blasphemous, you have a real bodily reaction. I recoiled. And he goes on to say, you know, that Jesus said, Because when that pastor did that, it was like I was doing it. And then he goes on to say, that might not sound right to you, but remember, Jesus didn't sin, and he took the punishment and the blame for all of our sins on his shoulders, and it's no different from that. He's taking the blame for this pastor's sin and saying, forgive me, because the pastor's never actually going to say, forgive me. I feel like he almost knew he was in a hole and was trying to kind of fight his way out of it. End of the day, though, I posted it, and I said, I tagged them. I said, take this down. This is garbage, and I think you know it. And a bunch of people on my feed jumped in, and a lot of them pointed me to a Gospel Coalition article about all sorts of weird stuff Bethel does, including like people laying on graves to like soak up like the spiritual energy of the dead person in the grave, like voodoo kind of stuff. And
weird.
I had this sense of like, I don't want to know. I've kind of stopped trying to learn a whole bunch about churches that are doing awful things because it's not my business and it just gets me angry. And
right.
I need less of that. It's really, I get really arrogant and weird and finger pointy. And at the same time, also with that church, they do have some darn good music that has come out of it.
Right.
A lot of people don't like any of it. I like a number of songs.
Yeah.
What do you think of something like that? I mean, you've got. I think the gospel being sung in a lot of these, something like, forget Reckless Love, something like This Is Amazing Grace, Phil Wickham.
Yeah.
It's a great song. And when I sing it, I don't have a sense of like, I shouldn't be doing this because it's those guys.
Right.
What about you?
Yeah, I remember when what was his name? Darn it. He sang Watch the Lamb.
Ray Boltz.
Yes. When he came out and, he's actively living a homosexual lifestyle, and there was a whole thing, and a lot of people were like, we got to throw away all the stuff, and we got to,
burn it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, why?
Exactly.
If the truth of God's word is in there, to me, it doesn't matter if the person is a heretic or not. If the truth of God's word is still working in there and working through, then it's still God's truth. It's like when many times in Scripture, when you would see the Pharisees making these prophetic, profound statements that came from God, and Jesus would be like, "Oh yeah, that's a great statement. It came from my Father." Like God is still working through the heretics, whether they want it or not. And so, to me, if there is something that is there and it's solid, and we can point to it and say, man, this is the truth of God's word being proclaimed to these people in the midst of all this, then I say we celebrate that. And we, to me, I would be like, let's encourage that and let's push for more of that, because we do know that there is a huge following of people like this, but we also know that in the midst of, the spiritual carnage, so to speak, God is still working and moving in that. And them putting out, great music that points to Scripture and points to the gospel, I'm all for that, and I'm all for celebrating that and listening to that and saying, man, put out more.
Is the fear that like people are gonna hear that music, look into it, go, oh, this is from this particular group, and then go listen to the teaching or something? Because I don't think a lot of people do that. Maybe it's happened, but the people in my church, they already, they have solid teaching. They often will come to me and say, I read this or heard on an article, I heard this on a podcast or a YouTube video. What do you think of it? And I don't tell them, no, don't ever listen to those people. I say you may be wasting your time with certain people, but
sure.
I would much rather they learn to discern for themselves and not and not have to keep bringing stuff to me. So I don't have I really don't. I used to. I don't anymore have like this scorched earth. You have to burn out the poison kind of mentality. I think about things like Paul saying, whatever their motives for good or bad, I rejoice because Christ is preached. I think about something like Caiaphas prophesying, even out of the wrong heart and God using it.
Yep.
All of that kind of stuff, I think, gives me a pause before I say. I mean, what is the danger of singing a song if the lyrics of the song themselves are not problematic? I don't have a beef with This Is Amazing Grace. I frankly don't have a beef with Reckless Love, but I'm in the small minority there.
I don't either, quite honestly. I think you hit the nail on the head, though, when you first asked the question, what is their fear? I think that's the problem, is that they're too afraid. People are too afraid of what will happen. And, I think it is a genuine fear. And the fact of the matter is that's sin. I mean, to fear what could happen when you do certain things or you say certain things, that's a problem. I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine, and I said, I discerningly am very honest with people about my life and my past experiences and sins that I've struggled with and sins that I still struggle with, sins that God has brought me through and that I've, by God's grace, overcome. And I remember this particular person was like, well, aren't you afraid that people are going to hear these things and they're going to be like, oh, well, you did it, and so it's okay. I said, no, because I'm not sharing these things in a glorious light. I'm sharing them in the sense that this is my story. This is where I was in sin. This is where I was at my lowest, and this is where God brought me from. It's the difference between gloating in your past sin and being like, oh, look at me, and being like, no, you don't understand. This is where I've been absolutely broken and brought down. And so when people are afraid, like, well, they're going to listen to the music and then they're going to get involved with them and all this stuff, it's like, you know what? Yes, that is a very real possibility. That is something that somebody could listen. But like you said, if in the midst of that, they're also hearing the gospel and that is truly being preached and proclaimed to them on a global scale, then I'm all for it. So.
All right, man. That sounds like we've settled, let's see, the disparate issues of Area 51, Spider-Man, and Bethel. And for the record, man, I think the reason to get rid of Ray Boltz is just because, it was all so corny. I don't know how many times I heard people in church put in the accompaniment track tape, and you'd hear like the and then like the warble, like, and it would start playing the piano for "Thank You for Giving to the Lord."
Right before they were about to collect for the missionaries. Oh man,
I don't even hate that song though. And there was one called "Watch the Lamb." I remember being really good.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is with Ray Boltz. Where he would be now if he hadn't come out with that particular revelation about himself, but I imagine he'd probably be forgotten anyway.
Yeah.
It's a weird business, Christian music. I still listen to a lot of stuff from the 90s. I listen to a little from the 80s, but not Ray Boltz 80s. Michael W. Smith, White Heart, White
Secret
Cross.
Ambition.
Dude, that album, Eye to Eye.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
We actually spent we were floating around my parents' pool on the 4th of July. Me, my sister, and my brother-in-law spent about an hour just talking through all of his early albums from from the one before that with Lamu on it. The Big Picture.
All
the way up through Change Your World.
Nice.
Which we thought were like some of the best Christian music albums that ever will have been. And then at my church we don't sing a ton of new stuff, and they played for me like his latest song that's like a worship song, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just terrible. And they were like, it might have fallen. I'm like, how do you go from something like Hand of Providence, and
right.
or even like what's the one? Oh, good grief! What's the one on Change Your World with the rap in it? I want to tell the world or Go West, Young Man, and then wind up here, man. Yeah. Get back to your roots. Get back to leverage, Michael. If you're listening, and I know you are, buddy, try to capitalize on this '80s craze right now and do a tour of all '80s hits, and maybe come out with an album of songs in that vein that sound a lot like that. That's what we want.
It's time to come home, Michael. Come home.
Mikey, if you're listening, buddy, come home.
Oh, man. Dude, and in that kind of same era as well, Stephen Curtis Chapman, his stuff, where would you put Michael W. Smith and Stephen Curtis Chapman? Are they kind of equal for you,
no.
Or do you prefer one over the other?
For me, I came into Stephen Curtis Chapman a little later. For me, Michael W. Smith, there is a certain kind of larger-than-lifeness. The first concert I ever went to at the Palace of Auburn Hills, where the Pistons played, was Michael W. Smith and Amy Grant. She was going to lead me on, and he was doing Eye to Eye. And I remember sitting in the back seat of the car when it was dark out and hearing like Ashton and like what's the one where there's like you hear like the Lord's Prayer, always living and learning. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
It seemed so much bigger than life. It seemed like it was infused with an actual kind of spiritual power. And I like Stephen Curtis Chapman. I think he's an amazing guy. He's lived an amazing life and he's made amazing music. But by the time we were listening to him, it was early. It was mullet years. It was like Tuesday's Child and, that kind of stuff. And Al Denson and some other stuff kind of came into the mix. They were just good singers we liked. I don't know. There was something about that first exposure at a young age and Michael W. Smith being in this moment where he was making music that really, I feel like some of that stuff reaches through era and it just grabs you. I would say Michael W. Smith and Rich Mullins are on equal footing in my mind as artists.
Yeah, Rich Mullins, amazing. Did you ever get into Jeff Moore in the Distance?
Oh yeah, I've got every single one of their albums signed in the basement. And nice. 3 times in a row when they were in my town, I was the guy who got to jump at the last. What was the song? It was one of those from Friends Forever.
When you are weak, I will be strong. When I fall back, that one.
Whatever. No, it was from the
Life Together.
It was one of those, and they would pull somebody up on stage to jump off like the platform for the drums with the last strum of the guitar, and the first time it was just luck. I worked for the radio station, so I was up in the front row, and then after that, I would say to Roscoe Meek, I'd be like, "Hey, I got to do this last time, but can I do it again?" He'd be like, yeah, sure. And so he would point me out. And then I started saying like, okay, I'm trying to become the guy who's had this happen the most times in a row. Those guys were awesome. Just nice. Really, really down to earth. When I worked for the radio station, I got stories galore on these guys, like all this era of Christian singer. And they were some of the most, they weren't like, here's our rider, this is what we demand. They were like, okay, bring us into the church basement, have a potluck for us. We will talk to everybody. They were just sweet people.
That's awesome.
And man, were they talented. And it was hokey music, sure. But then once in a while you get a song like One of My Best Days, which when I hear that, I will cry every time.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love the song, The Vow, that they sing.
Yes. Oh, my gosh, that is just so... That's Rich Mullins level right there is what that is.
Yes, and then the one that they have, the Salvation Army.
Oh, yeah, Heart to God and Hand to Man.
Yeah.
Dude.
Those two just always blow me away.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
What are the odds? I know his career isn't over or anything, and I hate it when people talk about people who, it's a different era of Christian music, and frankly, no one right now in Christian music deserves Jeff Moore. What are the odds we could get him on the program?
Dude, I wonder if we can somehow like Facebook this thing or Twitter it and tweet at him and see if he'd be into it.
We could ask our listeners to jump on board. If you want to hear Jeff Moore of Jeff Moore in the Distance, dude, this guy he's lived so much of this stuff. He went through the fame machine, and as far as I can tell, was not corrupted and ruined by it. Continued making music. Still, I mean, I think he was at Grand Haven, Michigan, on Worship on the Waterfront. It's this. You watch the sun go down over Lake Michigan behind the artist. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Not that many years ago, we went and saw that. I saw a Stephen Curtis Chapman and Jeff Moore combined concert.
Oh, man.
And they did each other's songs. Oh, it was so good. That was thousands and thousands of people. But I have a sense that he wouldn't be too big time for us.
Yeah.
He'd be like, sure, if I have time, I'm down.
Yeah. Well, and two, the other thing is I've still also got contacts for some of the other artists that we've done over the years, so we could possibly see about, if there are any contacts through them as well. So I could reach out to some of them and be like, hey, do you have a contact with Jeff Moore, and see what they have. So,
you know what I want to do?
Possibility.
What's that? I want to get Carman on. I want to find out how many eons he's been alive. What it was like to be a pharaoh in Egypt.
Oh, man. I remember growing up listening to his stuff. Oh, man.
If I want to annoy my wife, if I'm like low-key mad at her, but I don't want to say anything, I'll just put on like Addicted to Jesus or Who's in the House or one of those puffy coat, purple puffy
Riot.
coat era. Dude,
we want a riot.
I kid you not. I have 7 Carman VHS tapes in my basement right now.
Oh, that's so
including
awesome.
this guy, the cojones on this dude, the brass sand that makes no sense when I realized I was getting a little crass. That to release a movie.
I have that movie.
Starring himself. Well, do you have part 1 and part 2? Because he came out with it in 2 parts on 2 VHS tapes, and the movie's punctuated with videos from that album.
No, I know what you're talking about, the Riot video, but no, I actually have his movie, his boxing movie.
Oh, Carman the Champion. Yeah, I've got that too. But the Riot movie, he came out with it in 2 parts. So it was $50. You had to buy each one for $25 a pop. And then I got them for free when we stopped renting videos at the bookstore I worked at. I just bought them all for like $2 a pop or whatever. But I got to tell you, it wasn't that bad, man. If you and I are ever in the same room, that's what we're doing. First thing.
Nice.
I'm going to give you a hug. We're going to sit down, and we're going to put in... There's this scene where because he moves from... he's a cop, of course. He's the hero.
Right.
He moves from the inner city where there's gangs to this like town in Oklahoma that he remembers visiting as a kid, where it's all simple life. But guess what, man? Gang violence follows him there, and he's got to clean up the town. And
it's like the PG version of The Substitute.
100%.
Did you ever see
the Tom
that?
Berenger's?
Yes.
Yeah. It's 100% that. He walks into this diner, and these gangsters have and they're all like Latino, which is weird to me because he's always kind of like celebrating that culture, and then he really stereotypes them. But he comes in, and one of them is standing on the like bar, the little bar at the front where you sit and drink your milkshake, and he pulls out his nightstick, knocks the guy's feet out from under him, and goes, "Feet off the table." And the guy falls down and like breaks his body on the. It's like, oh, Carman, you're such a magnificent specimen.
This was in the era where police brutality was not
celebrated.
Really
It was one of the. Exactly. It was an article of faith. Oh, here comes my son carrying his karate bag, looking like he's just defeated a room full of ninjas. Dude, this has been an eclectic ADD episode.
Oh my goodness, yeah, a little bit of everything, and we didn't even get to one of the things. Maybe a little bit by providence we didn't get to it, but we'll see if we circle back around. I'll leave it as a mystery out there.
It was not Carman related. That's the hint.
Yes, it was. Not even a little bit.
I could make a connection, but I won't.
All right, dude, this has been great. We're going to go ahead. Want to remind people, don't forget, go ahead and ask to join our discussion group on Facebook. It is a dope group. We have great discussions on there. Also, throw us some love, reviews on iTunes. Also, you can get on to Spotify. You can listen to us on Podbean and Stitcher. And just throw us up some reviews. It just helps people to find us a little easier. You did see that we got one more recently, correct, Zach?
Yeah, and it's funny for a podcast like 165 or something reviews to be like, oh, we got one, but that's us.
Right.
That's where we stand. You know what? We need your affirmation to carry
That's
on.
right. That's right. We want the love so that we can continue to love you. And then we'll love everyone. All right. All right. On that note,
you guys, it was really hot in that car.
Yes, it was. Even though I've been sitting in my basement for the past 40 minutes.
Take some time to come back around, though.
That's right. All right, dude. Well, we're going to go ahead and sign off now. Zach, we just rocked the Casbah.
Please go to 11.